been in chronic pain and they want to do this, they want to shift into something different and focus on themselves, um, the mind will probably, I'm guessing for most people, be on autopilot of the pain. This pain is so intense. This pain hurts so bad. Why do I have this pain? Right? Could you help the listeners maybe with some reframing of being able to focus on their own being instead of focusing on the pain?
So what you're saying is, in that case that you're stating, the person is not in control of their mind.
It could
And
be, yes.
that would be the common situation.
Right.
The pain is so intense. Well, it's not because the pain is so intense. It's because you have not cultivated a relationship of your mind where you're in charge and
Mm-hmm.
have the mind working for you. If
Yes.
if you had cultivated that, and it doesn't have to be cultivated just because of pain or so, it
Right.
can be cultivated all the time to have your mind placed where you decide it
Yeah.
to be, not
Yeah.
going from object to object, situation to situation all over the place and leaving you behind.
Right. And what I love about that is taking that control back, that reminder, that constant reminder to ourselves of taking the control back. I
Right.
focus my mind. My mind goes in the direction I want it to go.
Right. And that taking the control back is something that you have to exercise, that you
Right.
have to practice, and you have to know what to do about that. That's why I
Right.
call this approach that I'm teaching is called the Expert in Life program.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an expert in life approach. It's so as an expert in life, you're in charge of your mind. You
Right.
understand your mind. You are able to have your mind feel very secure and pleasured by finally doing what it is designed for. So then the mind feels at peace and it
Yes.
feels good because it's doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I can feel that relief in my own body as we're talking about this, because I'm, thinking about this and talking through it. I was putting myself in the position of, just thinking what it would feel like. And that reminder of pulling or bringing, bringing the control back to us, especially with anything. Pain is the example right now, but we often it's so, for many people, and I've heard this throughout the years on the show and friends I've talked to, we forget how much power we have. And that's something I talk about a lot on the show. And it's a constant reminder, even to my own self. We forget how much power we have, but we have the power. We get to direct our mind. We get to be in our body and experience our body. And end of story. That's once you make that decision, once
Yeah,
you come
but
to that realization.
Sloan, I've meant to say this to you before. It's not just being in the body. The body is just one facet of us,
Mm-hmm.
just like the mind is, and the feelings, and the emotions, and the senses. They're all our instruments.
Right.
What I always say, but there is somebody in there. That's
Right.
the you, that's the energy, that's the power of being that I'm talking about. That is your real identity. That's who you really are, you know?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
when you're in touch with that, then your mind will work for you and be in a harmonious relationship with you. And the same thing for the feelings and the emotions and the senses. Look, how few people know about their feelings
Right.
and about their emotions.
Right.
They might have some idea of sensual pursuits and delights or lacks, but still not really be in touch with the senses functioning other than getting the results of when they have lack or whatever, you know?
Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, this was a great question. So I want to thank the listener who made this comment, and I want to encourage everyone else to keep your comments coming. Questions, comments, we're always open for them. So again, I mentioned earlier, you can comment on any of our social media, or I'll put our email addresses in the show notes if you would prefer to send us an email, and we'll do our best to answer your question on the next show.
Well,
All right.
let me just mention something about that I consider really important.
Sure.
What you're just talking about is like with their comments, with listeners' comments and so on. It's a way of participating,
Right.
not just being a listener, not just having words, but engaging in the action of participation.
Right.
So much of the time, we keep it all in the mind level. Well, I have these questions, I have these thoughts, I have these ideas, and they usually not go very far
Right.
un- until you take actions, until you inform yourself to the ultimate degree and then act upon that.
Right.
Do you have consequences that are beneficial to you?
Right. Yes, which leads right into our topic for this week of creating what you speak. Obviously that is the title of the podcast. I came up with that. It's been 5 years ago now, because it was so important for me the changes I had been through in my life were just as you had talked about. There were things I wanted. There were different things that changes that I made within, but the action part, pulling that all together and being able to act on it. Once I saw what I could do, once I saw my own power, once I experienced me in that way, my life has never been
Uh-huh.
the same. Never been the same.
Right, right. That's why I like the subtitle of your show so much, creating what you speak. Because I mean, I work like with students and people in therapy all the time, and I always end up saying, what we say is only valuable when we use that as guides to our actions.
Right.
But if we just talk about it, it's worthless. And everybody can know about that because we sure know how quickly we forget things,
Right.
that we mentally understood, but
Right.
we forget. So they
Right.
don't really give us any benefit.
Mm-hmm.
All the knowledge in the world is worthless unless you have it inform your actions and
Right.
inspire and direct your actions.
It reminds me of I don't know. There's several, when people talk about doing something or waiting for something to happen, right? And the joke was always like somebody who wants a relationship, the man or the woman isn't just going to come knocking on your door, right? You have to get out there and do something about it, right? You have to go on dates, you
Yeah.
have to do things to meet people, whatever it might be. And that's life, right? We can sit and talk and theorize and tell you everything you need to know, but unless you do something and experience it for yourself, you're not finishing the other part of the equation, right? There's the personal responsibility that is required in this life to get what you want. And I think sometimes people are afraid to act. People are afraid to do there's many reasons why people don't act, but the action part is the important part. And that's what we wanted to talk more about today.
Right. I use the example, uh, what if your lover were to say, what if a person who you think you have a relationship with says to you, well, honey, I love you, if you want me to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? That
Yeah.
is such a passive, it's not taking any responsibility, it's not taking any action. Would that be sufficient to you, I
No,
ask, from your lover?
no,
Would that
absolutely
be a
not.
love relationship?
No, it reminds me of like like if you've ever shaken hands with somebody that you were excited to meet and they had like a dead fish handshake, like
Yeah, right.
there was no energy there. That's what that reminds me of. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, but when you relate to yourself in that dead fish way,
Right.
but now pause for a moment. Do people do that?
They do.
Relate to
Yeah.
themselves that way? You
Yes.
see? Then you ask yourself, do I do that?
Right.
And then,
Right.
but then it comes, do you tell yourself the truth or do you rationalize?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And rationalizing is just an impolite way of saying lying to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that I love that dead fish analogy because I'm thinking about my own life here. And if there's areas of my life where maybe I do operate as a dead fish, right? Some areas I'm very action oriented and I'm I can make things move because through my actions, but in other areas, I think I do rationalize, and I think I do tell myself these stories to, for many reasons, right? But that analogy is so true for this topic today. I'm just thinking through it in my own life.
Yeah, yeah. So taking actions, I find, especially taking action according to what is very important to you and your
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
is very rare. People
Yeah.
don't, they say that, they go to a therapist for years and years and pay tens of thousands of dollars, and they go to the therapy, and maybe they even go to a really good therapist, but if they don't take action, it's useless.
Right. I was listening to somebody recently talking about, they posed the question, are you a, like, is self-help study your life? Like, are you constantly in some sort of self-help study, but you're never actually taking what you learn and applying it, right? You're just always seeking for the next thing that you need to improve yourself, but you're not experiencing life, and you're not doing things and getting out there. And part of life is making mistakes. Part of life is messing up. And I talked a couple of years ago, I gave this example of myself experiencing life when I entered into a dance competition. It was a 6-week competition where every week we learned a new dance, and we only had a week to learn it, and we had to perform in front of people, a lot of people, and you had a different partner every week, so you had to get the different dynamic there. Some weeks were really bad, some weeks were really awesome, but my whole point in doing that, when I got myself out there and did that, was I wanted to do this. I wanted to experience this. I love dance, and I wanted to do this so much that I took action, and I enrolled, and I did it. And what I found at the end of that, it was so amazing to me how many people said to me, "Oh, I would never do that. I would never do something like that." And how afraid people were to live, how afraid people were to get out there and learn dance moves in front of other people or practice dance moves, right? They were so afraid to do that. That was so surprising to me.
And you gave yourself a challenge, and it had its ups and downs. But after a while, I would bet you even enjoyed the challenge, meeting the challenge of it.
I did.
It
I
was
loved that.
part of the dynamic and part of the powerful pleasure of it.
I did. I loved the challenge. And I also loved being so proud of myself for getting out there and doing it, because it was way out of my comfort zone. It was tiring, right? There was a lot of practicing while most of us were all still working full-time day jobs, so we had to do this on nights and weekends. But getting up and doing that, I was so proud of myself for doing it, and so proud of everybody that I met too that did it, because everybody was in the same boat. But that's still something that stuck with me even since then. And what I found too, in these kinds of experiences, when we're able to push ourselves, and we're able to, and I went through that, I experienced it, I didn't die, right? I made some mistakes, but I still lived my life. That has helped me do other things that I didn't think I could do, right? Or do other things where I felt like, oh, I might be embarrassed here, or I might mess up in front of people. And then my thought was, well, I danced and I did that, so how could this be any worse? So it was very helpful in that way for me.
Right, right. And you found out that the concerns were overcome just by yourself doing it. It didn't really matter whether you had a bad partner or a good partner, or whether you messed up or not. It didn't matter. You were engaged in that whole thrust of showing to yourself how you could do what you set out to do.
Right.
That's the wonderful thing. And then you had the experience of that. There was a possibility to constantly experience that you are being, while you were dancing, while you were getting to know the new partner, while anything and everything.
Right. Yes. And that's this topic of creating what you speak, and actually taking the creation part from speaking. Because when I when I came up with the title and I was thinking about how I wanted to set up the show, and this has been 5 years ago now, right? But the whole, I based that off of what I had did, and this was even prior to dancing, but it was how I had made a decision of what I wanted for my life. I got out of that perpetual seeking self-help and trying to constantly improve myself. And I took action and I did it. And the being able to do that